So a common question that comes up a lot is, why does any of this matter? If life is without an objective value, meaning, purpose, or narrative, and the universe is indifferent to our existence, then what difference does any of this make? Good question. An understandable question, given the circumstances and the investments we place in them. The truth makes a difference because it reveals the underpinnings behind the life experience, which is that life is a momentary existential application, as opposed to life being a byproduct of some external independent material medium. The truth shows that there isn't anything to change about existence fundamentally. Only those that seek to avoid the present moment and fancy reality to be a byproduct of an external independent material medium think that something out there needs to change to bring peace of mind. In this existence, a lot of thought and energy is spent evading reality and circumventing the truth. The main reasons of which is because we have become estranged from reality and find more comfort in ego validation in lies and falsehoods, which, despite their familiarity appeal, do not bring any lasting peace to the mind. Because these types of supports are empty, impermanent, transient, and non-substantial. And because of this, awareness cannot draw any enrichment, sustenance, or well-being from them. Real serenity and purity of mind cannot put roots down in illusory appearances, much akin to trying to build a foundation in the middle of a mud pit. It's not going to be possible. It's never going to be possible. But the perceived problem isn't with the mud, the tools, or the materials, the foundation, what it's composed of, or the settings that it's all taking place in. The problem is with the subject that is placing all sorts of unwarranted hopes and expectations upon these items behaving a certain way, otherwise known as the game of desire and aversion, which, simply put, is the non-stop hassle and constant struggle of the aggravated subject to try and sustain specific conditions, or try to avoid specific conditions, all of which culminates into a general state of distress, deprivation, and dissatisfaction. Oh, sage, I'm not malcontent. It just appears that way because my faith and hope is so strong and unwavering that it only appears to be malcontent, but it really isn't. Yeah. How about stop trying to convolute in a deliberate attempt to find some way around a truth that you have no way to account for? But, sage, how I feel is perfectly understandable. Being awake to the spiritual warfare around me does not make me particularly happy. It saddens me. It hurts me deeply. My mind, my body, and my soul are in constant turmoil. Basic worldly pleasures have become annoyances and distractions. I'm weary of the world, yes, but only because my spiritual resolve is so strong. If you really had spiritual resolve, then you wouldn't be in such a state of angst. Spiritual resolve comes with unconditional acceptance And everything implied in that statement is indicative of unacceptance, resistance, and evasion. But, Sage, despite all of my issues and flaws, I have faith. Faith that one day this will all be over with. There it is. Non-acceptance for what is. What are you waiting for to be over? And what are you anticipating to replace it? It won't ever be over. There's nowhere to go, and nothing to escape from. But, Sage, I do accept it. I'll go to hell with all of you, if that's what it takes, and I'll forgive you when we're down there. There it is again. Understand. There's no going anywhere, heaven or hell. This is it, right here. If you accept it, then your inner state should be of serene peace. This is the indication of whether or not you have accomplished it. You can't fake unconditional acceptance. This is it, right here. Nothing more, nothing less. But, Sage, you don't know if this is it or not. And there it is again. Compliments of more religious conditioning. From where do you get any idea of an afterlife? Or some kind of eternal spiritual state, where you continue on, somehow retaining your ego identity? Even from a spiritual standpoint, realistically, this isn't indicative of being the case. At least not in those particular terms. And as such, I can say, yes, I do know. As far as things are concerned right now, you see that? It doesn't close the door completely on any possibility, but also isn't afraid to take command of the real, clear, and present temporary aspects of functionality. Because, you see, you can only go by what is, not on what could be or might be. You go with what is. That's how you build this thing called knowledge. And I don't say this as endorsement. I simply state it as a fact. This is a fact of knowledge. You build knowledge on what is. There's nothing else to consider until such considerations arise to be considered. For if not, then it leaves the door ajar for the divine otherworldly, which always leaves us impotent and inadequate, and longing for some unrealistic ideal that is always just out of reach. This is exactly why the thought of this moment, being the pinnacle of our existence, is an unwelcome notion, which holds us back from peace and enlightenment. And what's that you say? You'll have plenty of time for peace and enlightenment when you're dead? No. It'll be too late then. Non-being isn't an existential medium. And, of course, there it is even yet again. More escapism. More delay of becoming unconditionally centered and settled right now, this very second, in favor of some imagined future scenario. So then the question must be asked, why hitch a state of mind and a sense of adequacy to the ephemeral movements of illusion? Emptiness is good enough as it is. We only think it isn't because we are constantly chasing or fleeing some wanted or unwanted circumstance. But the issue is not in the circumstance, but only in that you desire some of it and have aversions to the rest of it. This kind of mindset is representative of the kind of defilement religion wreaks on the mind, how it fills the consciousness with falsehoods and impurities. The very framework of the holy divine template is degrading to a human being's very existence, as it sets up unattainable ideals that mankind never has any hope of reaching, as he is relegated to an inferior, flawed creature by the very fabric of his being. And this is a major contributor to the reason why people are not able to be at peace in the present moment. And so, ironically, we defer peace and enjoyment of existence to some future imagined ideal state, heaven, and motivate ourselves to endure this suspension of a full life experience with the prospect of avoiding some future imagined wretched state, hell. And if religion isn't enough, there is still more than enough of this kind of sentiment to go around materialistically, as there is always more money to make, faster cars to drive, fancier houses to occupy, prettier mates to chase, and bigger roller coasters to ride. Again, the basic simplicity of the truth isn't enough. And what you have isn't even appreciated. For the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Hence, you gotta go exercise and go jogging to get more fit. You have to put on more makeup and fashionable clothes to look more attractive. You've got to hoard more objects to try and fill up the void inside of you. Always rushing around, scheming and hustling, forever looking past the present moment. Never able to just stop, sit still, and clear the mind of worry, lust, and cravings. This is the life of addictions. Motivated, desirous, competitive, driven, impassioned, devoted, addictions. Habitual ritual addictions. A world full of busy men with nothing to do. Because after all, it's important to always keep busy, as it helps us avoid the present moment. Keep busy with the right tools, such as our portable media constructs, just in case we ever unwittingly find ourselves in a quiet moment. Instead of looking into ourselves or simply interacting with another human being, we can always safely withdraw and hide in our books, newspapers, radios, tablets, or smartphones. Avoid the present moment. Avoid the present moment. Avoid the present moment. At any cost. And by all means necessary. Now some of you may say, Sage, there's no way to avoid the present moment. That's impossible. We can't help to be present for our experiences. It's unavoidable. In the literal sense, of course, but this is just a sort of figurative way of speaking when we refer to someone avoiding the present moment. In the same way you might attribute someone as using alcohol, video games, or movies as escapism from reality. They aren't actually escaping anything, literally, but the mind is certainly trying. We certainly attempt to find ways to try and avoid the moment by not accepting it unconditionally. Like the drunk man who drinks to avoid his pain. He's not actually avoiding it, but he's doing something to his consciousness in order to not deal with it. So yeah, no one can avoid being in the moment, but they certainly avoid dealing with the moment through distractions and diversions of one type or another. And what difference does any of those distractions make in the end? See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There isn't any end for things to add up or make a difference to something. All these yearnings do is disrupt the present moment. For how could awareness possibly end up somewhere? What, where? There is no location existing anywhere. Life isn't a place. Life is existential. It's momentary. But sage, unconditional acceptance sounds like fatalism. Are we to stop making guesses and navigational changes? No. But are you making guesses and navigational changes from a peaceful mind, accepting everything unconditionally? Or making guesses and navigational changes in a desperate attempt to avoid or sustain circumstances, thinking that they need to be situated a specific way to bring you peace? But sage, accepting everything the way it is unconditionally sounds like the same thing as trying to avoid or change circumstances. You can accept abuse and tolerate it and die on your knees in a peaceful statement of non-resistance, or you can fight and die on your feet, doing everything in your power to change the situation. None of it makes a difference, except to the one it makes a difference to, so it's all the same thing. It's not really the same thing, no. But I know why we want to conflate them. The last part about it only making a difference to the one it makes a difference to at least partially touches on a truth. And we already went over how avoidance is exercised. It's mostly a way to not deal with it, as opposed to an actual removal from it. But to an extreme, there are ways one can actually literally avoid the present moment. Through excessive sleep, for example. The difference of the aforementioned situation being unconditional acceptance is the key to self-recognition. Fighting against external appearances fosters delusions. Saying they are the same thing is like saying the man who sees the mirage as a mirage is the same as the man who mistakes the mirage as a source of water. One way leads to more delusion, the other leads towards more enlightenment. The freedom to live, create, and have experiences unfettered from attachments. Well, slightly more clarified. Existentiality being free of hang-ups, sickness, and destructive emotions are dependent on being unfettered by desires and aversions. And so, why is any of this important? Well, apparently it's important to many people, as we are constantly probing spirituality with questions and complaining about everything, indicating that a solution or answer is sought. If you are asking why it is important in some imagined objective sense, it isn't. This is an existential matter, and the essence of existentiality is of awareness itself. And what is it that is ultimately aware of awareness? Self-recognition dispels delusion, yet delusion impedes self-recognition. Solving this quandary takes spiritual fortitude. Yeah, Charlie. Yeah, Charlie.